So let me give you a quick introduction. This is one of the most powerful ideas I have come across. This is the work of Marshall McLuhan, who is actually doing something. He's actually retrieving Aristotle's four causes in order to figure out what is going on with any human artifact. So the context in which he presents it, he calls it effects of media effects. Okay, but it applies to any human artifact. So let me explain using an example. What he's saying is that anything we make, anything we design, anything we make has four kinds of effects and four kinds of causes, you can look at it from four different perspectives. There are four kinds of causations. There are four kinds of effects of everything. And by looking at anything from these four different perspectives, you understand it better. So let me start off with my favorite example, and that is of a chair. So what is a chair? Okay, people will say, oh, that's something you sit on. Okay, but he says no. He says, look at what it is trying to retrieve. He says, retrieve means what's the seed of the reason why you produce a chair. And what it is really trying to retrieve is a sense of comfort. It is trying to give you comfort. And how does it do it? So that's the retrieval. How does it do it? It does by enhancing comfort. How does it enhance the comfort? What it does is that a chair has a seat which replaces your seat. Chair has a back which replaces your back. Chair has hands which replace your hands. Chair has legs that replace your legs. So all the normal exercise of energy of your muscles that you would be taking, that in order to move or in order to stand or to sit on the floor, all of that is taken out and replaced. So you no longer need to exercise your muscles and you achieve comfort that way. So that's how it enhances. Now, what does it displace? Now, this is important. What is missing? What happens is that without chairs, you would be standing more, you'd be sitting in positions, you would be moving constantly. So it's the engagement, full engagement of muscles on a day-to-day level, moment-to-moment level is what is being displaced. What is overextend? So that means what happens if you sit too much, if you use that medium too much? Well, you're going to lose your ability of your muscles. You're going to actually lose part of your health because you are not exercising your muscles as we were evolutionarily adapted to do. Let's take another quick example of TV. What does TV do? What TV is retrieving is performance, your experience of a performance that you would normally get, around a fire, with storytelling. That's what it is retrieving, which is something very human. It's combination of bodily movement, mimetic movement, and oral communication. That's what it is bringing back. How is it enhancing it? So instead of getting it only with some friends, family, and occasional splurge of festivals, now you're getting it on tap in massive quantities without having to do anything. And the sheer quantity of it that you're consuming of performance from others just goes through the roof. That's what is enhanced. What does it displace? It actually displays family time, actual genuine social interaction. It is one way. TV is broadcast. You're taking in stuff, but you're not doing anything. You're just sitting there. You're taking in stuff. If it was an actual performance, you'd be going back and forth with the person who is talking. So you're losing interactivity. You're losing social connection. It is displacing books that you would read otherwise. What is the consequence of it? What if you watch 10 hours of TV a day, which is what, it's amazing how much TV Americans watch. What happens is that your mind now is much more passive as opposed to active. You are filled with fantasies because the TV shows are designed for you to watch ads. So they are going to just produce all kinds of emotions in you. And the thing that you're taking in is actually not connected with your life. So you're going to be going on what he calls inner trips. So these are a few examples of how these things can be used. I want to connect it to other ideas that we've been studying. We've been looking at John Boyd and his idea of Ooda Loop. This is very much of a Ooda Loop. Overextension, being aware of overextension, is to observe what is it that you have lost? What is it that is missing from your life? Every technology has all kinds of effects that are unpredicted, unintentional. Everything has a tendency of producing all kinds of effects. Observing is all about saying, how am I doing in regards to my values? What is happening? Instead of being focused on the figure, you're focused on the ground of what is changing. So that is observation. Then orientation is trying to find the seed of what in principle would be a solution to the problem. That is also retrieval in Marshall McLuhan's term, which is orientation in John Boyd's term. Once you have identified the core of what you need to do, you need to plan out what you need to, how would you actually implement it? And that's what Boyd calls decide, or which is equivalent of planning. So you plan out what you need to do, or you work out in space and time what needs to happen. So that's the enhancement. And then you execute. And by executing, you're actually displacing things in the world to change them in the way in which you have designed them to be changed. And having done that, you actually, again, go back to observation. And this is not passive observation. This is actually asking yourself, what is it that you got wrong? What is it that you did not expect that happened? That is giving you feedback on your process, on your orientation. You're reorienting yourself. So this is very much connected with Ooda Loop of John Boyd. So this is a very, very powerful tool that I find extremely useful. So I want to just wanted to tell you about it. I'm happy to take any kind of questions that anybody might have. So any thoughts, any questions? Go ahead and type exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom if you'd like to ask anything. Joe.
So, yeah, just one quick question. The idea of TV, and I was just thinking about this, we seem to be watching more and more of it. It seems to be there's no overextension of it, in a way.
No, overextension means that it is going to produce negative impact. So if you're watching more and more of it, that means what is happening to us? I think people become more passive the more TV that they watch. What is it that distinguishes this medium that we do of meetups from TV is that it is interactive. There is back and forth that you get. We are using books. We are actually reading books, and we are getting from, we are learning from that, and we are writing things. So it is that interactive loop. What TV, the overextension means is that if you keep doing something, what are the bad effects that are the consequence of it. Even if you look at things like news, somebody else is selecting what is it that you should be watching. And their criteria of selecting that is based on running the ads. So they have to give you something which is sensational, that is going to produce, it doesn't necessarily have an impact on your life. So your mind is full of things that are dissociated from what you need to be focused on. That is overextension.
So now I'm understanding actually why the median is the message, because that where the overextension aspect of it is just the effects of what the median is. So say TV is the median, and then what does it overextend? And then the negative effects can still be compounding, but that's why that's the median. And then that's impacting how we go from a passive culture from to reading, which is more active, to more passive, and we're consuming now.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And what it is doing is that it is also telling everything that you come up with, watch out for effects of
Right.
it. It's a way of providing that feedback loop. Another thing you're saying, like, for example, consider speech, right? I'm saying something and then I'm saying, okay, what do you think? That's a way of getting feedback, because it's very easy to to overextend yourself, keep building on the ideas that you have, unless you actually say, okay, what are the other effects of it? And other people are usually able to see them better than you. And if you closely listen to them, maybe you will notice something that you would not have been able to notice on your own.
Thank you.
Yep. Jeff.
Thank you for doing that, Shrikanta. I think it's brilliant. I think that there are even in addition to it, a little bit like the figure in the ground, that there are a couple of other things about it with regard to dimensions and with regard to dynamics. So with regard to dimensions, there's sort of the things of which I am aware, and the things that certainly exist, but that are beyond my own awareness.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So let me build on that. The idea of figure and ground is central to how Marshall McLuhan thinks. So if you look at the tetrad, there are two things which are the figure, and there are two things which are the ground. Let me see if I can bring it up again. Lost it. There it is. So if you look at this, what happens is that when you notice overextension, that means you notice something is wrong, okay? And you retrieve a solution for it. Once you have retrieved the solution, that becomes the figure. That is a figure at that point, because you're saying, that is my idea, that's the seed. When you enhance it, when you extend it, you're working consciously on it. So that too is figure, okay? But when it displaces something, that just happens, and you often do not notice what you displace. And you certainly do not notice when things are overextended. So if you look at the displace and overextend, that is where the implicit subconscious under the water ground is. The other two are figured. Another way, Madeline is about to ask a question, so I'm going to,
But let me respond to what you said just for a second, because what provoked this for me is the circle, and that in a way, sort of the circle seemed to be the sphere of things of which I'm aware. And then there's a world outside that circle.
No, that's not how it is.
Okay.
That's not what this figure means.
Okay.
The circle, basically the displace and overextend is the thing that is below our consciousness, and that is kind of coming into consciousness. The circle does not mean that in this figure. Circle simply is to indicate a movement from one to the other, that all these four are engaged. They are actually engaged in parallel, all of them. So the thing is that each figure has a meaning, and circle in certain contexts can be used to say this is inside and this is outside, but that is not how the tetrads work. So that's outside. And before I hand it over to Madeline, I want to point out one thing, is that this is very much connected with Jung's functions. So the red and the yellow are the NF kind of functions, whereas the retrieve, the blue and the green are the T and S functions. So retrieve, you retrieve the core of the idea. It is the concept that you have. The enhance, you're actually building something in external world based on that. So that is the TS part. And then you have what is displaced is you intuit it. And then the overextend part is your value implications of that. So that's how it maps onto the Jung's functions. Madeline.
Okay. Well, thank you for this. It's a nice bonus at the end of the evening.
You're welcome.
First, I want to compliment you on your graphic. I like the colors. They're muted but distinct and very readable.
Mm-hmm.
What Jeff said and then what you said about figure and ground, I'd like to propose a slightly more dynamic way of looking at it, which is that each one of these four things takes its turn being the figure. So like right now, we're very aware of the overextend part of digital media. So that is actually a figure right now. It's a big, huge topic of public debate. Zuckerberg's going to Congress, something. So that as time goes on with something like digital media or a chair, the four different things of this almost go through phases of being either being the figure or part of the ground. And then when you said, I had forgotten about that session, it was a long time ago about.
Let me do one thing. Let me respond to that, and then you can go to the next one. I disagree. I think the overextend, for example, take digital media. Yes, people are talking about it, but I don't think anybody actually knows. None of us know what is the impact of the digital world on us. There is a lot of overextension happening. What we are trying to do is that we are retrieving from that overextension what we think is going on of the seed. And so whenever you talk about something, that you're retrieving, but there is this general unease. There is a general nervousness about how is this world changing? And there is a lot of things happening that are changing at a very fundamental level, and we don't know what they are. So that's what happens. So that is very much of overextension. Whenever we say that is what is happening, we have retrieved something. That's not necessarily the whole, and you would enhance that in the saying, okay, you make this whole theory, but still you have to watch out that the overextension is much bigger than we think. The other part of even displacing is pretty large, because what exactly is digital displacing? I mean, there are many things we can name, but actually the way of life has changed. Just the way of life has changed. There are so many aspects of the way of life. So that is but what happens is that when you retrieve something, when you say, I got it, that is in the consciousness that you are thinking about it. Or when you are explicitly making something based on your idea, you're working on it consciously. So that's why these two, the blue and green, are largely conscious. And it is true that displace and overextend, you try to conceptualize that, but a lot of it remains in the implicit, whereas most of the thing in the blue and green are explicit. Please go on, Madeline.
Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you for that. That cleared things up. So retrieve and enhance would be two of Jung's functions. Could you just talk again about how you see these being, so that retrieve and enhance, those were what, S and T?
I would say retrieve is T and enhance is S. Let me make one more connection here. Okay, we are looking at a book, The Design Way. And the fundamental point he makes is that design is a combination, is a result of the true, the real, and the ideal. Okay, so the design is the green part. You're making something physically. And the true part is the retrieval. And what it is doing in the real world, that's the displacement. And the value implications of that you're trying to do comparison with the ideal and seeing where you are, that's the yellow part. So that's how I see it. So there are, people who are trying to think in an integrated way. I find there are lots of parallels. These are not really exact parallels because each person divides things differently. Like Jung divides things differently than what I'm doing. I'm using I'm just saying that there is parallels between what is here and what other people are doing. Okay, let's go with Charlie, Sanjay, and Evanik. Charlie.
Yeah, you kind of answered sort of the thing I wanted to bring up, but I just kind of like to highlight it just a little bit.
Please.
When you talked about retrieve, now retrieve in the sense that you were talking about was, picking something out of the, bringing something forward in the terms of a figure ground, so that you see how you have an awareness of how a new technology is affecting your life. But in the case of the design, that's more agentic, okay, and it's also more fundamental in the sense that the retrieval process in design is to go back to an original functionality of what it was that the technology what it's really all about. Okay?
Charlie, let me interrupt with for example, in the chapter that we studied, he was talking about the party.
Exactly, I was going to use that word. Yes,
right.
But it's the ideal party. Okay, where is when retrieval, when you're just looking at what it's kind of like George Bernard Shaw. Many people look at the way the world as it is and say why. I look at the way the world could be and say why not. So it's a different approach.
So let me understand. Let me tell you about how I'm thinking about this. Okay, how it maps onto Harold Nelson's ideas. So party is not necessarily, that is the core that you think is the seed of what needs to be built up. Okay, it's not necessarily ideal. It is not necessarily ideal. That is your best approximation of what you think is ideal. And then what you do is that you develop the party into a full-fledged design. And in the process, so you start with the schema, start with the party, try to build it out, and then you are continuously seeing the displacement and overextension. And if you find that is not a good party, then you change the schema, you change the party. So party, the retrieval is the core idea as best as you can.
Yeah.
Ideally, you want to get at the right one, and that just flows amazingly well from there. But that happens in multiple steps. See, what happens is that there is a tendency, there is a, the beautiful thing about the tetrad is that it breaks what us human beings do into multiple phases. Most people try to do everything with a single phase. They have like a hammer. And I'm sure I'm guilty of that, and they use that one tool and they want to be able to do everything with it. What this is saying is that it is what he calls a compositional assembly. This is a compositional assembly, whereas each of the functions are different and they serve different functions and they provide checks on the other functions. And you need all of them together. So one single one doesn't do it in one. So for example, the ideal part comes, you become aware of the full value implications of what you're doing a little bit later. And you have to kind of take that feedback again to say, yes, I tried my best to retrieve what I thought I was missing. But then when I fully develop it and displace other things, I have to ask myself, have I actually gotten that? Have I produced some other effects and use that to kind of come back? So it is very much of a feedback loop that is going through. Next up is Sanjay.
Yeah. So I mean, this is new. The diagram is new, but I see things that we've discussed earlier in this. And I mean, so I'm just going to comment first on what I think this represents to me. I mean, this is a diagram of basically information and action that happens within us, but I think it also that happens within the world. I don't know if this is supposed to be only about things within people, but
no, both, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Please go on. Sanjay, please take your time. This is great. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot on that, but because this is new for me. I mean, this representation of it. But so that's one that I think this represents information action throughout the world, the universe. The more focused question is the enhance part, because yes, enhance is a very important part of information and action. You want to be able to enhance information. But to me, I mean, I think if that is changed to the word change, that would be more representational, because to me, how do you handle de-enhancement? Like that's
very good. Very good. So the change. So there are two parts. Once you come up with a core idea, what you do is that you build it out fully. So enhance. He has a very beautiful way of putting it. He looks at enhancement as extension of senses. So television is your ability to see more than what you would normally see. You're getting the whole world in. So in that sense, it is enhancing. The change that happens as a consequence of what you built is part of the displacement. You're trying to enhance, so you're trying to enhance your capacity. See, another way of looking at it is that the enhance, using Aristotle's terms, it's the efficient cause. It is basically your way of transforming things. What are you trying to transform? And that aspect is captured by enhance because you're explicitly designing for that. As a result of that, you're going to change your world. Your, use of TV is going to change your world. Like, for example, let's take the book, right? I don't know whether I'm making any sense, because the change happens in two ways. One is that there is a tool that you have built that is able to do certain things. And then like a hammer, for example, right? Hammer is like an extension of your arm that increases your leverage. It increases the hardness with which you can hit something. Let's take just those two combinations. So that's what hammer is, your enhanced hand. And then you use the hammer in order to change the world. So there is a change that is happening in building of the tool, which is captured by enhance. And then that is transforming the world in a certain way by displacing certain things, that is captured in the displaced part.
Okay, so if I can, I mean, what I understood is that the enhance is actually talking about the efficiency with which we gather information or interact.
Exactly. It is the efficiency with which we transform the world.
Okay, yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Wonderful. Next up is going to be Evanique, followed by Madeline. Evanique.
Yeah, I just had a question. So with this figure, are we starting, like, does it always start with overextend, or can it start at any of these points, either retrieve, enhance, or displace?
Excellent question. Marshall McLuhan says that all of these are active all the time. So these are parallel. These are like, you can think of them. He uses them as multiple perspectives on the same thing. So he would be looking at the chair and he's saying, okay, what is it retrieving? So what is the core idea of it that it is trying to, what are you trying to accomplish with it? How does it do it? That is the enhance. What is it displacing? And what will happen if you use it too much? All of those things are aspects, is a way of understanding what a chair is. So you can use any of them at any time. There is a relationship between various tools. So previous tools create like an overextension, which creates an opportunity and creates a problem for the new tools to come and solve. So there is there is a chronological influence of different tools, but they are, Marshall McLuhan thinks of using this as parallel perspectives. I like the way of doing it both ways. Another way of thinking about it is, this is a thinking tool. This is really a thinking tool. So it is a way of shaking you up from the typical way you look at things and making you look at it in three other different ways that you're not that familiar with. So that's one thing. The second thing is that I like to use it as a cycle in the Ooda fashion. I'm a big fan of John Boyd. So I like to use it as a Ooda fashion of coming back at the same thing that you've come up with to see if there is anything more, if I can make it better. So in that sense, I like to use it as a cycle. You can also make observations about what you're good at and what you're not good at. So you can evaluate, are you good at retrieval? Are you good at enhancing? Are you good at actually displacing, so that actual execution? So are you good at planning? Planning is basically enhancing. Are you good at coming up with a core idea of what you need to do? That's the retrieval. Are you good at noticing when things are off kilter, when things are away from your values? That is overextension. So you can use it to evaluate yourself. So one of the things I like to do is that on a scale of 1 to 4, say which ones, where are you strong, where are you weak? And you can say, okay, given that, you can use it to say, okay, I will interact with people who are strong on these other things when we are talking about the same thing. So maybe, so there are multiple ways of using it. So it's a very simple assembly, compositional assembly using the design way tool. But it has so many different ways I can see using it. Go ahead, Evanique.
Yeah, so with that, I just had another quick question. And actually, you kind of answered it, like, how do we use it as a tool? Or my question is, so does each one act as its own tool as well as a cohesive unit, like in Chapter 9 of Design Way?
Absolutely. Okay. So if you want to, if you want to do, kind of map the design way as a book, the retrieval is the core idea of who a human being is. So that is part 1 and 5 are about man as a designing animal. That is, he's trying to retrieve that. Enhancement is all the design techniques that he teaches us. That is enhancing of our designing capability. That's about enhancing. The displacing is what he's saying is that, so just stepping back, the design way is a response to the analytical world, where people are trying to break things up into smaller and smaller pieces. So he's trying to provide an integrative way. So the displacing he does in part 2 of the book, where he defines new concepts like the ultimate particular, the idea of service, idea of whole, idea of systematics, is a way of thinking about these things in an integrated fashion. So he's really displacing the normal conflicts that people think of when they formulate those ideas. So that's what he's doing in displacing. And then finally, in overextending is his section 4, where he talks about the effects of design. What happens when there are unintended consequences? When is design evil? What is the splendor of design? What is the guardian of design? How do you make sure that the design, all of that is about watching out for overextension? So his book is actually these 4 parts.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Next up is Madeline.
Yes. I liked Sanjay's suggestion about changing the word enhance to change. And the reason I liked it, just thinking about his talk this evening, enhance, it's almost as if we only were thinking of the green excitatory neurons in a feedback loop, and we don't have the inhibitory ones, and they should be included in the enhance part. Because there may be, we might decide, I'm going to stay away from digital media, but say with chairs, we might say, you know what? Chairs are really terrible. We have lost our muscle tone. We were all much better off when we were squatting. Let's go back to that. So we're looking at what's been displaced, and instead of retrieving chairs, I guess we're retrieving something earlier, which is squatting. But actually what I had initially put my hand up to say was—
No, let me address that. So actually the way in which the inhibition and the excitatory thing is built into this is that the excitatory part is with enhance. It is doubling down on something that you know and keep building it, keep making it better. Okay, that is the excitatory part. The inhibitory part is also there, but that's not there in the green part. That is there in the yellow part and partly in the displaced part. So the inhibitory aspects of it is separated out. See, that's the beauty of this. So both those things are there. So what it is saying, what Marshall McLuhan is saying, is that people get locked into their ideas and they start building the tools out. And they try to double down on whatever they have found as to be making things better. But in the process, you lose something, you displace something, and you overextend. So it, what he calls flips. So it actually produces negative impact, starts to produce negative impact once it goes beyond that. And to capture that, the inhibitory axis, there is the displace and overextend. So he's capturing both of these, but he's doing it in separate way because actually it operates differently. It's like what happens is that only after you've used the chair too much, you say, well, what is happening to me? Why is it that my energy level is low? Why is it that I'm putting on weight? All of that. So it kind of separates out that way. Sorry, Madeline, go ahead. You had more?
Okay. The other thing I was going to say was, I know that you did this once before, but I think it would be great if you could do it again, which was to do a presentation and discussion on this with the OODA loop and the the 4 Jungian functions. That
That's
was
what I'm
really
doing right
fun and
now.
exciting.
Madeline, I'm doing it right now. This is going on. It's live.
I meant for the general public.
This is general public. What are you talking about? Oh, thank you. Next up is Joe.
So the one thing that just struck me is you were saying, something about evil design almost, and how that's related to overextension. So that the design is almost forcing us to overextend ourselves and is taking us nature in a way, our own true nature. And that's different because that's intentional versus bad design, which would be something that is just it would snap back. It wouldn't cause us to continually overextend. So I'm thinking of something in the digital world that it could be designed to force us to continue to overextend, versus it can be designed, and that's evil, whatever call it, because it's taking us away from nature intentionally, versus the idea of a bad design is just something that it doesn't necessarily incentivize. It allows us to come back to not overextend. So
Yeah, no,
that's the distinction between those two.
Yeah, no,
And
that's,
then,
that's a great
and then there's intention in that, right? What's the intent? So if somebody's intending to design something to overextend, then they're achieving their intentions. It's just evil.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Excellent point. I don't think I have that much to say on it, but it connects with the point that Sanjay was making, that this is not just internal tool. This is a tool for looking at kind of society, of saying, what is being done, what is happening. The one part of it is that, first thing I want to say is that one thing I like about this design is that it has built-in feedback loop. So it's you're trying to maintain homeostasis. This is a way of saying, no matter how much you get carried away with enhance, pay attention to what you're displacing. Check if you are overextending. Keep asking, is there a better thing I can retrieve? And what it does is that all these 3 things serve as a check on the enhancement. And it is a very deliberate way. So in that sense, I think this is very good because it provides that feedback mechanism to everything that we are doing. But the difference between the intentional versus unintentional, I think that's a great great point. And I don't have too much to say about that right now, but it's an excellent point.
And then ethics has a role too. In this, I'm trying to link it to something that Mark maybe was talking about, and people trying to return back to the Tao or return back to the cardinal virtues.
Right. So let's look at it in 2 ways. One, we are looking at the Bible. Okay. Right. So we are looking at John, Gospel of John. So Gospel of John is right here. The word is the retrieval. That is the true. Word made into flesh is the enhancement. You're producing something in the real world, Jesus in this case, which comes from the word. It displaces, it has an impact on the world. It displaces some things. And then there is judgment where things get separated out. So there is that loop. So in Tao Te Ching, you can look at it in terms of what the book itself is, right? You can pick up anything and put it in that, the black square in the middle. So if you go ahead and put Tao Te Ching there, right? You can ask yourself, What is it? What was it in response to? The Tao Te Ching is in response to the social hierarchy, artificial social, social hierarchy, Confucian social hierarchy that China has always had. That's what it is responding to, that, something deep inside you is being killed by that. So that's what that overextension of the previous tool, it's responding to. What is it retrieving? It is retrieving nature, and it is retrieving the nature in human beings. Deep idea of who you are as a human being and what nature is. It is trying to retrieve that. It enhances it through the entire book. The Jing part is enhancement. It is writing it out with these amazing metaphors, showing it to you, the theme, the seed that it has gotten about nature and human nature in so many myriad ways. That's the enhancement, that the Jing or the book, that is the enhancement. That's the product. That's the design. Okay. What is it displacing? It is displacing people being materialistic, people's lives which are dominated by social obligations. That's what it is displacing. Also have to look at what it can overextend, is that it can overextend by not fully grasping what names can do. What we have learned in the West about the power of names, which has enabled us to develop science. The Bible, the science, the technology, all require naming. You can contrast Tao Te Ching to the Bible, which starts with, there was a word. Okay. Now, Tao Te Ching starts by saying, if it's a word, then it's not a real eternal word. It's exactly opposite. So you can see that, you can take something like Tao Te Ching, you can take something like Bible and use this tool on that. Does that help?
That helps a lot. That helps a lot. I mean, in a way though, I feel like the Tao warns us of overextension.
Oh yeah, it does. But what I'm saying is that everything,
it's opposite of the word itself. Yeah,
everything will warn you of certain overextensions, but in the process, it will also overextend.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. See, I'm saying it warns you against using names in a wrong way and forgetting what the names refer to. It is saying, do not forget nature because you're using words. That's what it is saying. But in the process, it overextends by saying of not fully grasping the power of names being used the right way. The entire scientific method can be seen as a way of self-correcting system for using naming, of saying you don't just use words, you test them and then you modify them. You always be aware all the theories that you hold. If you see something which is against it, let it go. That is core of science. That level of precision, that level of methodology of dealing with names are not there in Lao Tzu. That's not to blame him. I mean, he has retrieved nature. Nobody could be more, I am just tremendously grateful. And he does that so spectacularly, so beautifully. And that's something that we need to learn, okay, of saying we need nature, we need human nature. That's what he has given us. But at the same time, while admiring, being a tremendous admirer of Lao Tzu, you have to always ask, what is the overextension? Because that is the part of making sure that the tool that you're building does not cause damage to you and others.
That makes sense.
Wonderful. All right, folks. So thank you so much. I thought this was just an amazing conversation. Really appreciate that. And Joe, thank you for asking the question that led to all of this.
No problem. This is a lot of fun.
Wonderful.
This is a lot of fun.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Sanjay, thank you very much for everything that you do. And I really liked your comments. So this is just great.
This
All
is
right.
very interesting. So do you do this after other talks like this?
No, this is all Joe's fault. Because Joe, he said in the breakout room, can I ask you a question about Tetrad? And then he said, wait a minute, this is being recorded. Why don't you do a clip of it? And I said, well, if I'm going to do a clip of it, I might as well do a better clip of it. So I have a better clip.
Excellent.
And I'm just getting started. I think this is a very powerful tool. It's a very integrative tool. It brings together so many different things that I'm just beginning to explore this. Marshall McLuhan spent a large part of his life trying to develop it. Nobody understood it because it is so different than the typical methods that are used today. So this is a way of retrieving something which is very old. And so I'm delighted about it. So thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Thanks.
Good night. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.